Just woke up from a nap, and it's one of those naps. And you wake up, and you feel like you got hit by a truck, and you're mad thirsty. It's one of those. Chapter 3. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. The Bible declares that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. The Bible also declares that without faith, it is impossible to please God. Job was a man with enormous faith. He was the greatest man in the East at the time, pertaining to being a true man of God and the wealthiest man alive during that era. In the land of Uz, it was a privilege to have such a great man like Job living in it. Job was the fear of God. Job was perfect and upright and depended on the Lord in everything that he did. The fear of God reigning in his heart was a principle that governed his life. Job loved his children, and it brought him great comfort to see them feasting in their houses with each other day after day. All 7 of his sons had their own day to host the feast, where they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. Job was not only great and rich, but was also wise and had an interest on earth and in heaven. So now there came a day where the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came along with them. The Lord asked Satan, "Whence comest thou?" And Satan replied to the Lord, "To and from the earth, and from walking up and down in it." The Lord then asked Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? Satan answered the Lord by saying, "I cannot get to Job because you have a hedge around him." Satan also told the Lord to let Job be poor, and he would curse thee to thy face. It was likely for Satan to believe that if Job was impoverished, he would renounce his love for God. At that time, the Lord himself declared Job the best man alive, and even in today's world, Job still could be recognized as the greatest man that ever lived. If Satan could have proved that Job was a hypocrite, then it could have been that no man during that era was true and faithful to God, because the precedence and standard was set and given to Job. The devil then started his proceedings against Job, and all of Job's trouble came right after the next. The devil took the lives of all of Job's children, the servants, his wealth, and all of his animals. He took everything that Job had. Job's own wife told him to curse God and die, but because of Job's faith in God, the Lord brought him through this terrible ordeal. The Lord returned to Job everything that the devil stole from him and much more. Job passed that trial and tribulation with honor and applause from the Lord. This is the kind of faith that the Lord wants us to have in him. Daniel was a prayer warrior who could stand in the gap for anybody, and who had enormous faith in God. He was thrown into the lion's den by King Darius because he disobeyed a decree signed by the king. Daniel did not let any carnal decree get between him and his God. He continued to pray to the Lord every opportunity he got. Some wicked men visited Daniel, perhaps under false pretenses, presuming to do business. At that time, they probably knew that he would have been engaged in his hour of devotion. These wicked men had guessed right, because when they got to the place where Daniel was, he was on his knees praying, making supplications before his God. His love for God made these men jealous of him. The wicked men then went to King Darius and told him what they had seen Daniel doing. The king himself, with the utmost reluctance and against his conscience, signed the warrant for Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den. The king loved Daniel, but I guess he was reluctant to go against his decree because he might have been seen by his people as being weak. King Darius told Daniel before he was thrown into the lion's den to trust in God, that God whom they'll serve continually. The king pleaded to God to deliver Daniel from out of the lion's den. Even though King Darius knew that the Lord was going to deliver Daniel from the lion's den, he could not forgive himself for what he had done. King Darius called himself an unjust and an unwise man for not adhering to God's law. Daniel prayed to the Lord while in the lion's den, and the lion's mouth was bound, and they could not cause any harm to Daniel. My brothers and sisters, this act of faith by Daniel is ultimate faith in the Lord. That is the kind of faith the Lord wants us to have in him. It is my prayer that each and every one of us in the entire world develop that kind of faith in the world. The wicked men themselves who spied on Daniel were eventually thrown into the lion's den. King Darius then honored God by signing the decree that was published to all nations, but which they are required to fear before him. God. So my friends, what the enemy meant for bad will always turn around for our good. A few verses. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 to 11. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, for by its the elders obtain a good report. Though faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. By faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation he added his testimony that he pleased God. But without faith it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to God must believe that he is the rewarder of them that diligently seek him. By faith Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by that he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. By faith Abraham, when he was called to God into a place which he should after for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Though faith, also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised.